You know, if you're anything like me, you recently purchased the Dungeons & Dragons starter kit, Dragons of Stormwreck Isle, and you ran it for your nieces and daughters, and that's frightening. That we both have that in common. Anyway, while I was putting the game together, I found a few places where I thought I could improve the story, and today I want to talk about them. Now, most of the changes are going to involve the lore of the island. We're going to change a lot of the characters' backstories, as well as some plot points that are going to drive the adventure forward. Will I succeed? I guess that depends on you, so let's get to it. All right, a couple of notes before we begin. If you are a player, don't watch this video. I am going to spoil the entire story, so please move along, lest I ruin what could be a really fun experience for you. 2, I am a writer, so most of my changes all concern the story, the characters and their motivations. A more seasoned DM may disagree with some of these choices or feel like I am railroading players too much. This is just what I thought, and ways that I thought the story could be better. And the third thing is I am very, very, very new to Dungeons & Dragons. I've never played the game as a player. As far as like running a game as a DM, I've only run 3 games in my entire life. The last of which was literally running the first part of this game. And the other 2 times, I ran only 1 quest from the Essentials kit. And the other time was a one-shot adventure that I wrote called Beware the Dark Sisterhood. It's available for free, by the way. I'll put a link in the description if you want to check it out. The last thing that I want to say is I found a ton of great videos that helped me plan the adventure, and I'm going to call them out where appropriate. A couple of standout videos. I really liked stuff that I found from Bob Worldbuilder and Matthew Perkins. Matthew Perkins has a whole series that is dedicated to just rewriting the adventure we're going to talk about. And also a shout out to Gray from 1-2 Juice, I believe is the name of the channel, that had a great thing that I took for a way of introing the game. And he sort of described it and set it up like a movie with the camera coming down through the clouds and, focusing on the boat that's taking you to Stormwreck Island. And then you have the players describe what they were doing. And I just felt like that was an excellent way for players to start making these characters their own and becoming comfortable with the idea of role-playing. So I like that. So basically, anytime I borrow something from someone, I'm going to make sure to drop the credit where credit is due. Okay, the lore. Now, I kept the original story of Sharuth, the red dragon that wreaks havoc on the Sword Coast, and the 3 metallic dragons who join together, one of whom is rumored to be a Stalagan? Let's say it's a Stalagan. And how the 3 of them kill her over the Sea of Swords. She falls into the ocean, and through her fiery, dying breath forms this island. That part I kept. I added a little detail that at the time that they kill her, the King Killer star is passing directly overhead of where she dies and where the island will form. That's going to become an important element later on. Okay, so here's where my changes are going to begin. So 1,000 years ago, there's a bronze dragon named Astelagan who becomes the guardian of the island, right? So Astelagan is an astronomer, and he becomes convinced that the passing of the King Killer star, which marks the anniversary of Sharuth's death, could be used to awaken Sharuth. So he builds this observatory on the island, and he spends hours there watching the heavens, and he's amassing a library full of material on magic and ritual, and he stands guard over the island, and he kills any chromatic dragon that dares cross its shores because he's convinced that through ritual and magic and the King Killer Star, they can sort of bring this horrible dragon Sharuth back. Now, he doesn't live there alone, right? So he lives on the island with his daughter, Runara. Now, Runara disagrees with her father, right? Whereas her father is sort of killing and slaying any of these chromatic dragons that end up on the island. She thinks and still believes in a lot of ways that there could be peace between these dragons. Like that she really believes that. She thinks that rather than approach them with violence. You can approach them with peace and forgiveness and mercy and all of those qualities. Now, 333 years ago, a blue dragon named Azelior comes to the island. He befriends Runara. She invites him and his wormling children to stay and live there in the island. Now, her father, Stelagon, he's not quite convinced, and he's not happy about this whole thing, but she convinces him that her way is better than his way. Like, if we're going to stop this violence, then we have to do it through peace. So he eventually relents, and these blue dragons, Azelior and his children, live there. And at first, things seem pretty good. He has a thirst for knowledge, just like Stelagon, and he eventually, breaks him down, and he sort of lowers his defenses, and he even lets Azelior into his observatory, and he invites him to read the books in the library, which become his undoing. Because when Azelior learns of this prophecy, and he discovers that the King Killer Star passes over the island every 333 years like clockwork, on the anniversary of the death of Sharuth, he realizes that if he kills a dragon and takes that dragon's soul, he can do this ritual and raise up Sharuth and get all of Sharuth's power and do all that wonderful stuff. So that's what he does, right? The comet passes over at that moment, and he slays Stelagon. And as Stelagon's dying screams echo over the island, Runara rushes to the observatory, and she sees her dead father on the ground on the roof of the observatory. She sees Azelior, the blue dragon, performing the ritual, and his children, the little blue wormlings, are watching this all happen. She explodes in a blind rage, and she kills everyone. She kills Azelior. She kills his children, all but one, right? One manages to escape, flies away from the observatory, barely escaping with his life. And there she is, this lover of peace, this lover of mercy, having done this terrible act of violence. Her father dead on the floor. She feels completely responsible for it, right? She's the one that invited Azelior and his kin into the island. So she's torn with grief for her father and the murder that she committed, and the children that witnessed the murder, the kids that she killed and the other kid that escaped, now will go off in the future always hating metallic dragons. So the ritual actually has succeeded, though, right? So at this moment, the final incantation can be said, and Sharuth can raise itself from the underneath his underwater prison or whatever beneath the island. But she doesn't do that. Instead, she uses the power of the ritual to transform herself permanently into a human. She renounces her dragon ways. She completely gives up on that lifestyle, and she becomes a human, though her soul remains that of a dragon. So while she gives up all of her power, she still is a dragon, and that's going to be something that can come up later. She completely blocks off any access to the observatory, closes it off. That's why it's locked behind this magic thing with the Moonstone King. She then buries her father in a small grassy area on the side of the cliff, and she builds a temple to Bahamut there. She pursues then from that moment on a life of nonviolence, and she hopes to teach others the same. She invites people to the island, and she tries to teach them these ways. And that's where the story starts, right? It's 333 years later. The comet is returning, and with it, a blue dragon named Sparkrender, a wormling, and the grandson of Azelior. He seeks to complete the ritual that his grandfather started.
And I will finish what you started.
And get revenge on Runara. Enter our players who arrive on the island and notice the approaching comet in the heavens. If you notice, there is no longer an Adron. The Adron character and story part of the story is completely removed. I don't think we need Adron. We have, it felt weird. There's really no connection to Adron except he's a dragon you save at the end. We're going to use Runara for that bit. We're going to get to that later. So now let's talk about some of the characters. Okay, the characters. Now, Runara, right? We already covered a lot of Runara in the lore section, but let's just go over it again. She gets a very significant change, and she becomes a central piece of the climax. One idea that I loved from Matthew Perkins' video series was he talks about making Runara a human, and I think that's genius because as the game is written, Runara's this dragon the entire time, and it's kind of a cool reveal that, oh, I've been a dragon. But if she's got all of those powers and she's just there to sort of rescue the players if they get into trouble, why doesn't she stop Sparkrender, right? I mean, I get that she's non-violent, but then she's also asking you to commit violence. So it doesn't make a lot of sense for the character. So I love the idea because it fixes a lot of stuff. Make her human, give her the stats of a commoner. But because she still has a dragon soul, Sparkrender is going to kidnap her and use her in the ritual. And if you think about that for the climax, the players have met her and hopefully have grown to like her. And there's some stakes there. So there's some stakes in the final battle that if she dies, and she can die, you lose someone that you've just spent, 3 sessions with or 4 sessions with. It's just not a random dragon that they haven't met. It's kind of an old hippie lady, right? So it also moves that reveal that she was a dragon to a moment in the story where there's like a lot of stuff going on, and it'll feel very cinematic. I also like the fact that Sparkrender's anger stems from his family trauma. Now, I think there's a mention in the original campaign or the original text that he is a descendant of that blue dragon. The blue dragon, from what I remember, is not named. I feel like with the little changes that we're making, we're keeping that sort of idea, but there's more of a connection, right? There's more of a connection to Runara. In my head, Sparkrender's mom was moved by Runara's teaching, right? So Sparkrender's mom, who would have lived on the island, had sort of spent time with Runara and has like maybe a belief that's similar to hers, even though her father is the one that did the ritual and killed Stalagan. I feel like that character has its own perspective. So she would have grown up on the island, believed that dragons could live together. So her desire for revenge is sort of tempered by that. So when she flees, it's only her offspring that feels this, because Sparkrender's approaching it from a different perspective, right? He's coming at it out of anger and resentment and feeling like his family deserved more than what they got, and there's a distance between Sparkrender and the conflict that happened on the island that would allow him to act the way he does. Kobolds, right? So there's a lot of kobolds that are available. There's 9 or 109. I don't know. There's a lot of kobolds. I picked 3. First one was Blep. So he's described in the book, I think, as he has a dagger, right? So he's got a dagger he thinks is magical. I kept that, right? So his info remains pretty close to what was written. He's got an ordinary dagger that he's convinced is magic. But the change that we're going to do is, in the new version, the dagger is made of moonstone. So anyone who's actually read through the game will be like, oh yeah, moonstone. I wonder if that's going to return. It is going to return, right? So it's a gift from Runara. If a player runs Detect Magic on it, it reveals nothing. It's just simply a moonstone dagger that seems more decorative than anything else. But what the players don't know is this is the key to the Observatory. It's not just some moonstone key that Runara is going to give you at the end. It's going to be this dagger that the players are going to be around the whole time. After the players complete both main quests, what will happen is they'll return to Dragon's Rest and they'll find that Runara has been kidnapped and flown away to their observatory, and Blep's dagger is going to be the thing that they're going to use to access it. And it's nice because Blep makes for great comic relief, right? With this unimportant dagger, and that can become the butt of many jokes. But in the end, there's a great payoff, right? He can feel important. It's his prized possession, so when he gives it up and sacrifices it for the greater good, it makes him a hero, and it sort of gives him, a reason for being there other than just being, oh, it's Blep. Oh, Blep. The other kobold I took was Rix, so Runara's assistant. So she, helps around with the temple things, but for the most part, her purpose is for the very end, right? So when your characters return, she's going to be the one that tells them that Runara was kidnapped. She's going to lead them to a secret room that Runara has where they're going to find a book containing information on how to access the observatory, the Moonstone, right? So players should know immediately that it's Blep's dagger, right? If they don't, they don't figure that out, you can always have Blep offered up and say, hey, doesn't this picture in this book that shows this Moonstone key look just like my dagger? So it'd be easy to sort of connect those two. All right. Next up is Myla. Now, Myla's backstory gets a pretty big update, and she's a great character for pushing players towards both quest lines. The Winch House, it's more than that. Now it's just a dedicated shop, so it's clear that we're selling stuff in this place. She's still injured and she cannot fly, but it's not because Sturgis attacked her. Or Sturgis. Is that how you pronounce it? I don't know. Again, I'm new to this stuff. Sturgis, the bat-like things, they're gone. Instead, in our story, a few weeks ago, her mother, Aga, and I took one of the other kobold names and just applied it to her mother, was unloading a shipment with her on the beach when zombies attacked. So Aga is killed in this attack, and Myla is gravely injured, but survives. When she's taken back to the cloister, her brothers Mech and Min, who had not been around at the time, they learn about this. They become furious, right? And they want revenge. They want to go out and slaughter a bunch of zombies that killed their mother, but Runara won't let them, right? She's still trying to preach nonviolence, and they get very angry about that. So they split, they leave, they no longer want any part of this, and they have good, for them, in their heads, it's good reason to why they're turning their back on the cloister. Now, Myla still believes in peace. She still believes in the teachings of Runara, so she stays, but she longs for the return of her twin brothers, and she's very worried about them. Players should feel sympathy at this point and get to see real world effects of this recurring zombie problem. It's not just some random encounter that's plaguing this poor town. And then hopefully, if it's played right, they'll feel something. She'll be able to sell the players, whatever item they need, except for healing potions, right? So she can't sell them any healing potions, because she usually buys them from Tarak, who we'll talk about in a bit, but he cannot make them because he's lost contact with the Myconids. She can also talk about how she is in pain all the time, and she's not been able to take anything because Tarak's not able to make anything. So that's another sort of push towards one of the quests. So she's obviously a victim of zombie crime, so you're going to want to send players to the Compass Rose. But she's also in pain all the time, and she can't get these health potions, and the town needs them, and that's going to push them towards the Seagrove caves. Tarak is the cook. He's the potion maker of the island, and he's lost contact with the Myconids, and players find that quest hook through him. That stays the same, right? But what's going to change for us is his backstory. Tarak is a poisoner for the Gilded Gallows, and when a wealthy man pays them to kill a local rival, Tarak is given the job. He crafts a terrible potion, one of his worst, and he disguises it as a wine bottle. The idea is they're going to deliver this wine bottle to this guy at dinner. He's going to drink it. He's going to kill him instantly. Now, unbeknownst to Tarak, his boyfriend finds this bottle in the kitchen, is like, oh, I'm going to surprise Tarak with a special dinner. And he makes the table. He makes this grand meal. He sits down. He pours them some wine glasses. Tarak comes home from a long day doing whatever Tarak does when he's not, poisoning people. And he sees what's on the table, and he sees his love of his life sipping the wine, and it's too late, right? This horrible poison is now going through the body of this guy, and he collapses to the floor. He's in bad shape. Now, Tarak is a master poisoner, but he knows nothing of healing potions. He skipped that day in class, and he spent more time on how to hurt people. So he's panicked. He's freaked out. He doesn't know what to do. He goes to town, and he finds this unscrupulous healer. But the healer's not going to do it for free. He wants money, way more money than Tarak has. So Tarak steals the money from the Gilded Gallows, the money that was used to pay him to do this crime, and he pays the healer. and the healer does some stuff, and he hands him this elixir, and Tarak gives it to his boyfriend, and nothing happens. His boyfriend dies. It's just colored water. It's nothing. He's screwed, right? Because the gallows are after him. The Gilded Gallows are after them because he stole their money. This other wealthy businessman is after him because he paid him to kill his rival, and his rival still lives. And worse, his rival now knows that a hit was put out on him. So Tarak has no choice but to run, and he runs as fast as he can, and he takes this first trip to Stormwreck Isle, this island that's hidden out in the middle of nowhere, and he's just ravaged by guilt and self-hatred. And you'll see this guilt and self-hatred is a common theme for anyone that comes here to this island. And he vows he's never going to make a poison again, right? He's going to devote his life to crafting healing potions, and that's what he does, and that's all he does, and he's getting better and better at it. So that's sort of his thing. When the players talk to him, I had him, when we played, be very standoffish. One of my players was a rogue, and so when we learned about the Gilded Gallows and they discussed it, he just sort of shut down a bit. But once he had their trust, he confessed to stealing the money. But that whole revelation of why he did it and what happened to the money and the poisoning of the boyfriend and all of that stuff, that's going to stay hidden until they complete the quest and get the Myconids back to where they need to be. Varnoth. Now, I did probably the least amount of changes to Varnoth. I thought she was pretty good as written. But I had her be in the library, right? So the players meet her in the library where she's researching the Compass Rose. And she has been spending the last few months trying to solve the zombie problem. So she's sort of figured it out that the first instance of a zombie is whatever it was 40 years ago or so, all started around when the Compass Rose wrecked there. So Varnoth is someone who feels terrible about her own guilt and all the deeds of violence. So she has a hesitation to want to join the party because she will confess that she has killed some zombies as she's trying to figure this out. But as she did it, she felt the old ways coming back. And she doesn't want to go down that road. She's worried that if she does, she's going to be right back in it. She's also older, and with time has come all this reflection. So she's still sort of a hardened warrior, but she's trying to keep herself from it. And she's suffering from a lot of traumatic stress from her past experiences. But anyway, she's there and she's got the information. So the players are going to know about the Compass Rose, and they're going to go seeking the Compass Rose, hopefully to sort of end this zombie problem that they've seen the effects of. Additionally, in the library, I filled it with tons of books that are all about like the story of Sharuth, the death of Esteligan at the hands of Azelior, how Azelior was slain by a bronze dragon. Now, there's no mention at this point, obviously, of who the bronze dragon was, just that it happened. They can also learn about the prophecy and that Sharuth can rise again, and maybe some information on the King Killer Star and that it comes every 333 years. You can, whatever you want to add in there. Next up, location-wise, we have the temple. So the change I made here was in the book, it talks about there's a statue of Esteligan near where the monastic cells are. I got rid of that. And instead, like in the Temple of Bahamut, rather than have Bahamut in human form with the canaries on them, I feel like, and again, I'm new to D&D, so maybe it's very common knowledge that dragons can become humans or take human forms and vice versa. To me, it shines too bright a spotlight on the fact that Runara is actually a dragon. So I got rid of that. I made the statue of Bahamut be in his dragon form, right? So this big, cool dragon statue in the middle of a temple, to me, is more interesting. So that was one change there. Otherwise, there will be maybe a secret passage, I'm thinking, when I get to the end part where players will go and they'll learn about how they need a moonstone to enter the observatory. But other than that, it's pretty much as it was written. I did add a cemetery that is off the temple. There's a mention in the adventure, the conclusion of Compass Rose, that when they come back with the talisman, they can visit a cemetery, and it says like it's on some other side of the island or whatever. Why show them that first, right? So I added that location so players can immediately explore it. So that's what we're going to do, and it's right off the side of the temple, kind of goes up the hill to this really pretty grass area. This is the place where Runara buried her father. So there's going to be a statue of a dragon head monument there that they'll see. There'll also be a grave for Brastos, so they'll see several graves going hundreds of years back. One of them, if they decide to inspect the graves, they'll see it says Brastos. They won't know who that is. If they ask about it, most kobolds may not know. Runara will say, oh yes, he lived here. He died a sad man waiting for his wife to come or whatever. And you can, sort of seed some of that Compass Rose stuff at that point. Also describe a freshly dug grave, and that is going to be for Aga, Myla's mom. For some reason, if they avoid talking to her first, you can sort of show the grave, and then when they talk to her again, they'll see it. Next up is the concept of having a daily dinner. Now, this one, Matthew Perkins from those videos, he talked about it. I think Bob Worldbuilder also talked about this daily dinner. I don't know if this is something... They mentioned dinners in the book, but the idea of doing it every night of the thing is awesome, right? So I think it's such a great idea, and it's a last chance to dump any info you need. And in my case, it was a great way to showcase the players as heroes. Because when I ran the adventure, I thought for sure, like, they're going to do the zombie attack. Like, you get on the beach, and the zombies are in the distance, but when we ran it, they just left. So they went right to the city and started talking to anyone. So we didn't have that zombie fight. So right before dinner, I had a surprise zombie attack. You hear Tarak screaming from the beach. The players ran from the temple. They're looking down from the top of the winding path, and they see this fight. Blep's out there trying to, fight zombies with a dagger that does nothing. And Tarak was hurt and sort of on the ground, unconscious. So they ran out, they fought the zombies, they beat the zombies. Everybody came back for dinner. Tarak had to use the last of the healing potions, so it even brought up the reason why they have to do that quest even more. And it was a great way to reintroduce things that were messed up. So like when I mentioned with Tarak, the Gilded Gallows came up, and he was very standoffish and weird, but now that he trusts them because they saved his life, he opened up and he confessed to having stolen the gold. So they don't know the money's gone. The players don't know the money's gone. So now they're also like have a reason for wanting to do the Seagrove Caves because they think they're going to get some big payout and not a very sad story about poison wine. But that was a great way to sort of right some wrongs that I had done, or at least the conversations had done. And it was great. So those two, that was not my idea, but I'm definitely would recommend that for everyone. After dinner, sort of the end of that first part of the adventure, they chose to sleep in the temple. So as they're sleeping in the temple, you can describe the island and the beautiful view, and the King Killer Star is now coming closer. So there's always this sense of like, there's a timer running. I included that. And every night, if they have dinner and before they go to bed, the King Killer Star is going to be in the sky, getting closer and closer. Okay, Seagrove Caves and Compass Rose. I have not run these two yet, so I have not completely planned out what I want to do. So I don't know. If you like this video and you think the changes that I made for sort of the overarching stuff and the character stuff is interesting, let me know in the comments, and I will do another video. That would be a lot of fun. One idea I will tell you that I know I want to do is when they do the Seagrove Caves, I want to have some murals that were painted by the Myconids that will depict the history of the island from another perspective, and then we can see sort of the relationship of the King Killer Star to the death of both Charuth and Estelle again, and then it's more interesting than just necessarily like look in the library and roll dice, and then I tell you some stuff that if you sort of see these murals and I'm definitely stealing this idea, I guess, from Soul Reaver, which is one of my favorite games. I think it's Soul Reaver 2 is your sort of Azrael is making his way through these levels. You see like these wonderful tattered murals on the wall that depict sort of the history of the vampires. So I'm going to do something like that. All right, the ending. Now, this is another idea that I love and I'm going to borrow from Matthew Perkins, is having the players arrive while the ritual is happening. I think that makes the most sense. It's exciting. You're doing all of this stuff. You're having this grand adventure. Things are building. The stakes are getting higher and higher, and the tension is ratcheting up. And then you run into Sparkrender who's asleep. Like it doesn't work for me. So he had suggested having this thing happening. I'm going to take that. And another one of his ideas that I think is brilliant is the idea of this countdown dice, right? So there's this, you take, I think he says, watch his video, but I think he says like a D10 dice or whatever. Is there a D10 dice? Again, I'm new at this thing. And then you count that down. Every time a complete turn goes, it goes down. And when it gets to 0, the ritual completes. So this is awesome. I love this idea of doing that for the final battle. So I'm definitely going to be doing that. In my version, the Clifftop Observatory is more of like a big tower instead of those like four or five different sort of things that are spoking out from a center thing. Players will travel from the Overlook. They'll use the Moonstone Dagger, open the Bridge of Light, and they'll arrive at the base of the tower. The first floor of this tower where they'll fight Mech and Min and some other baddies, right? Players at that point can persuade Mech and Min maybe to return home to Myla, or they can convince them to fight alongside them, or they can kill them. That'd be up to them to see how that plays out. Once they pass that challenge, they can rush up the stairs and discover the ritual is well underway on the rooftop of the observatory. Maybe there's a big telescope up there. The comet at this point will be almost directly overhead, so it's just sort of bathing the whole area in some eerie light. So it'd be a very, sort of exciting thing. Some changes that I'm going to make. Obviously, we talked about Adron is gone, so it's Runara who's in the center of the Ring of Totems. So the dragon totems hold her in place. I'm not going to have her chained up. Instead, the dragon totems are the thing that is holding her in place, because the ritual requires the death of a dragon to take its soul, to use the dragon soul at the time of Sharuth's anniversary of his death, which is marked by the comet, and to do all of those things at the same time. So she's going to be surrounded by those totems. And each of those totems will represent a lost soul of a dragon who died there. They'll be emitting dark purple flame, and with that flame, I'm thinking of describing Runara's shadow, and the shadow of Runara will be of a full bronze dragon, swiping that from the movie, right? The Phantom Menace, that early Star Wars poster with little Anakin, and then behind him you had the shadow of Vader, something like that. I think visually, obviously in your head, but that would be a very cool image and a cool way of revealing it. Sparkrender will be tormenting her. He can explain while he's doing all this stuff who she is to the players. She can confess to having done it. All of that stuff can come out, and right while the players are there, rather than her just saying whatever she says and then giving you a key. So I like that a lot. Players can either kill Sparkrender or they can destroy the effigies to free Runara. And if they free her, she'll have all the hit points of a fully grown bronze dragon, but no attack abilities and the AC of a commoner. Now again, these are all story changes, so if you are a seasoned Dungeons and Dragons DM, you may be like, well, even if she had that, if she has a low armor class, Sparkrender will kill her. I don't know. I'm going to find out when this thing plays out, whether or not she lives or dies. But my hope is if she's got a really high hit points and the players are defending her, she'll have a chance of making it. We will see. I'd be curious to know what your thoughts are. So Sparkrender, on the other hand, he's also using the countdown clock. He's got to kill her until the comet passes. So he's got a job to do, and you've got a job to do. Now, the conclusion, if the ritual succeeds, right, so the players don't make it, countdown dice goes to 0 and she's not free, it's over. If the player's freed her and Sparkrender kills her, the countdown dice, and they haven't killed Sparkrender, then it's over. Sharuth is awakened, and he's going to burst through the floor of the observatory from the center of the island, this massive death dragon, red death dragon, fire going everywhere, and some kind of spectral energy. Sparkrender is going to change from being like a wormling to a young blue dragon. I mean, probably not a full dragon. I don't know. I have to look at the stats. I'm thinking it should probably be a young dragon, but he's going to be full of arrogance when this happens, and he's going to turn to Sharuth and think that they're equals, right? And he's going to try to command Sharuth to attack the players. He's going to be like, I brought you back. You are now mine. And Sharuth is going to be like, what? And he's going to turn on Sparkrender, and he's going to attack him, and he's going to knock him down however many hit points, will need, half or whatever, that would make him sort of still a more formidable opponent than they would have faced had they not let the ritual succeed, but something that's not impossible to beat for players at this point who will be like level 3. After he does that, after he attacks Sparkrender, Sharuth is going to flee. And he's going to be off to terrorize the lands once again. And it would be cool if you keep playing this game. Like if you jump into the Essentials kit here with this, what is this? Dragon of Icespire Peak. Maybe you have that dragon be Sharuth, right? So in this version, you let him out, you finish this thing, and then later you're going to play through the Essentials kit adventure, and then that's the last dragon. That might be a cool way of really connecting those two adventures together. I have not, other than running literally one quest that I did before I wrote my own one-shot, that's all I did. So I really need to, I don't know if that is a substitution that makes sense, but that's the thing I love about all of this is it's so open to change. So I would probably make it make sense. But anyway, that's one thought. Again, you would have Sharuth out there, and then further games you could constantly talk about how Sharuth is terrorizing, and the players will always know it is their fault. Now, if the ritual does fail, you save Runara, she does not die, and the countdown dice ends, comets overhead, Runara's alive, Sparkrender's still alive. They will just fight a regular old blue wormling, right? And again, as I said, Runara will have full hit points of a dragon, armor class of a commoner. Hopefully that works. And then if she does die later on, they can bury her next to her father in the cemetery, which would be nice. It's sort of like she's back there with him, so that's got a nice ending for her should she perish. Yeah, and then I think that works. And then they come back and they go back as heroes. And in a case where Runara is dead, maybe the paladin, if you have the paladin there, he could be offered the role, and that fits in with his sort of, or his or her quest to find some meaning in his life or whatever. And then maybe that meaning is running this cloister. Or if they don't want to do that, or if they're not with you, it's another one of the NPCs. Maybe it is Varnoth, or who knows. Whatever you wanted to do, you can figure out that bit. If she lives, she can thank the players. She can give you a bunch of good stuff. I don't know. Those are just my ideas for this game. Those are ways that I plan on changing this to make it more interesting for me. And I don't know, maybe it'd be helpful for you. And so, did it work? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Let me know in the comments. And if you made changes that you want to let me know about, please include them. Oh, I guess I should say, yes, I did mention I'm a writer. So if you like these stories, that I've just told you, maybe you like how I tell stories, which you can find this book. This is my new book, Goblin, the Wolf, and the Well. It's available now. It's a graphic novel with art by Will Perkins. So check it out. And that one shot is available for free today.